Well, hey, everybody. This is Nancy Laine, and tonight we have a very special guest with us, Jeremy Heerdink, who is an Army veteran, and I've known Jeremy, Jeremy, thanks, first of all, thank you for being with us tonight. It's just so great to have you here. I really appreciate you making the time.
No problem. Thanks for having me, Nancy. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. You know, I was just saying, I think you and I connected, in April of this year, and you had joined our Project Transition USA group on LinkedIn, and I remember seeing that you were working at Macy's, and I just hadn't known anybody that worked there before that was a veteran, and so I invited you to connect just so we could learn more about your transition process, and of course, what we were just talking about a few minutes ago, after transitioning from the Army, you've learned a lot, haven't you, about transitioning?
Yeah, I have. I've made a ton of mistakes and learned a ton of things. So it's been good, and hopefully what I've been through can help some people out and make it a little bit easier.
Well, I'm sure that what you share with us this evening will help people from making some of the mistakes that you were telling me that you made, and also just benefit from some of the things that you did right. And as everybody can see here, we're looking at your profile on LinkedIn, and you're currently the program manager at Pinnacle Solutions. And I didn't know about Pinnacle Solutions before we had decided to do this interview, and so I was doing some research, and I was very impressed. I mean, here you've got contacts with NASA, and I'm like, who are these people? And then the more I started digging, here I find out that Mike Durant is the founder of Pinnacle Solutions, and not everybody may realize that he was the pilot in the movie Black Hawk Down. So I thought that was impressive, and so here you are working for Mike Durant. Good for you.
Yeah, it's been an interesting transition to get here, so I'm really excited about it and pretty blessed to have this opportunity.
Well, I'm really happy for you, and as we were saying a few minutes ago also, there's just so many things that we could talk about, and we've just got such a limited time tonight, but of all the things you've been through, Jeremy, just tell me what you wish you had known. I know you were telling me that LinkedIn has been helpful to you, right? And so maybe you could tell us a few ways that it has helped you in your transition since you got out of the Army.
Well, I think the biggest thing with it is that I didn't know how to use it, and I don't think many people do, and I think it's hard for a military individual coming out to hop on LinkedIn, know they want to go down a career path and start kind of cold connecting people and figuring out how to get in contact with these people, and then build relationships with it, which I've done poorly. I'm getting better at it. So I think the biggest thing is, being able to put a good profile together and then understanding, what people are going to look at and how they're going to search, and then making those contacts and then developing them. I've been lucky. I've had some incredibly awesome situations happen. I was connected to an individual who worked at Google. They were developing a new program dealing with logistics and fulfillment, which I was a part of at that time. And I got a LinkedIn message one day that was just, "Hey, I'm interested, and I have this project going on. Can you call me?" I called him, and he said, we've got this event going on, this Google Shopping Express. I think they call it Google Express now, and we'd like you to come out and interview and be part of the process. So, I got to go out there and interview with them, which was great. It just didn't work out as far as timing for me, but the fact that I got a random call and got to go out there and do that was a pretty cool event for me, and that's just,
wow.
Being connected to someone on
You were like cold called by Google because of somebody you connected with on LinkedIn.
Yeah, absolutely. And I probably should put that on my resume because that's just awesome to say. And go out there and visit that facility. So
that's really, really cool. And I know after you left Macy's, you were hired as, I'm going to just show people your profile here while we talk. You were hired as the area manager for Amazon in Nashville. Amazon has such a good reputation. That must have been quite an interesting experience.
It's a great company, great culture, good people to work with. I really enjoyed it, and had this situation not come up with Pinnacle, that just happened to be kind of the perfect situation for me, I would still be working there. But using LinkedIn is also something that worked for me to get into Amazon and to get the initial interviews. Getting into Amazon sometimes can be kind of difficult. You can put your name out there in the website, but the database is so enormous. I think the recruiter I talked to in the interview said they have over 1 million resumes in the database, so it's very hard to stand out. And for me, what was best for me and what I did was I've been involved in several groups that were HR groups, recruiting groups, and I had joined. So I was able to find recruiters, and I found a recruiter from Amazon. And
this is all on LinkedIn, right?
It was all on LinkedIn. Sent him a message via LinkedIn and just asked if there were any opportunities in the Nashville area, told her what my background was, and then said, I'd be interested in one of those positions if they come open. And she contacted me about a week or two later and said they were going to have a lot of opportunities in the near future. And then we called and talked, did a phone interview. That went well, and then got invited up to, I think, Louisville area, Shepherdsville, and interviewed up there, and then that went well, and then had an offer after that. So it probably doesn't work all the time, but I kind of feel like if you're talking to a recruiter who's directly responsible for doing some of that stuff, it may be a lot easier to get noticed than trying to put a resume out there with another, 999,999 resumes and hoping you get.
Yeah, I certainly agree, and I've had recruiters tell me that if they meet somebody on LinkedIn, it's really an advantage, and it's really a super advantage if somebody that works inside of their company actually says, hey, look, take a look at this guy's resume, because, they've got a stack of resumes. They don't have enough time to go through them all.
I agree, and another advantage with that, too, a friend of mine was doing the same thing at the time, and he was concerned about really what people thought who were in the company and working. So he found a couple people on LinkedIn who were ex-military, who were working for the company, who had a similar background to him, and contacted him through LinkedIn and was able to have some conversations and get some realistic input on, what he could expect and, what the culture was with the company. So, you can use it in a lot of ways, and I thought that was a pretty brilliant way of picking up some information.
Interesting. Yeah, speaking of company culture, would you be willing to share a few things that you've learned about that? Because I know that that's such an issue. A lot of people have the skills that companies are looking for instance. But to be able to fit in with the culture, I've heard from so many people that's critical, and I'd love to hear it through your eyes, somebody who's been there, done that.
Well, I would say now, having went through some of it, one of the hardest things, at least in my opinion, from a military perspective, is not only transitioning out into the civilian market, but once you get there, of finding a culture that you fit into, and then being able to focus what you're doing to fit into that culture to be successful. So, when you come out of the military and your background, depending upon where you come from, you may have a very specific mindset. You may have been a very strictly mission-oriented type person who's trying to move forward and always doing things. And you can get into an environment where it's not as fast-paced as you would think, and it is difficult to slow down and adjust to what's going on because you expect the pace to be quicker. But more importantly, you have to really step back and look at the dynamics overall that are occurring and really what's going on. Because, I mean, I fell into traps before that I didn't, a perception of me was created. However it was formed by an individual, and I didn't have an opportunity. I never actually sat down or talked to that person. They just made an assumption based on how I acted, which I thought was interesting because I was really focused on trying to get stuff done, but apparently, it came off to that individual wrong. And it really affected me for a long period of time because it was something that was difficult to overcome because one, I didn't know it existed. And then the second point was I didn't understand where it came from. So it took us a long time to kind of bridge that gap so we understood each other and our perspectives and where each of us came from. And once we were able to sit down and have the conversation, it was fine. It just took a long time to get there. So you have to be careful. You have to just kind of watch, listen, and take your time, which is a little bit different than coming from the military background.
Well, yeah, and you were in special operations aviation, and talk about a fast-paced environment. That's what you were used to, huh?
Exactly. So, you kind of have to step back, take some time, and really look around and see what's going on. But, I mean, I will say that culture is the most important factor that I've seen out in the civilian world, and it is what has driven me to each successive place. And, that's why I'm here at Pinnacle, because it's a culture that fits, and it's great to work in, and I can fit and I can make an impact in it. So I can't be more happy.
Well, I certainly understand. I mean, Mike Durant was a military pilot, and so here you both come from an aviation background and special ops, and I'm sure that that helps when you speak the same language.
It does, but it's also just the culture of the company and driving that culture and being able to maintain it. So, the background's nice, but it's the overall path that company's on, and it just happened to be a good fit. Amazon was a good fit too. I enjoyed Amazon. I enjoyed that culture, very fast-paced and fun. But just a different type of culture. But it was something that I fit in and enjoyed also.
I remember you told me you had no intention of leaving Amazon. You were very happy there. Then what happened?
I just got an opportunity to interview for this program manager's position here at Pinnacle, and everything just kind of worked out. And I ended up being the one that they made the offer to. And for me, it was just a great opportunity. My only concern with Amazon was, there's a lot of facilities. There's a potential for moving quite a bit. If you want an accelerated path in promotion, here I can come to the Huntsville area and be settled and be set. And not have to really worry about moving the family around. So that was, that was one of the overall, overriding factors for me to take this position.
Well, it's certainly understandable. I bet you moved an awful lot while you were in the military.
Yeah, we did. I mean, I was at Campbell for quite a while, which was nice and fairly settled there. But, you're still on the road doing that. So it's nice once you get out of the military, maybe not to have to do that so much.
I totally hear you. Yeah, my dad was an Army chaplain. I've been there, done that, and I'm happy for you. That you're in a place where it's such a great fit, and so many of our transitioning military friends want to be program managers. That's something that I hear a lot, and those program manager jobs tend to be incredibly competitive, aren't they? Any idea, for instance, why they selected you. And I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but I just, anything that you'd like to share that might be helpful to other people who want a job as program manager in a company. Anything that you learned that you'd like to share?
Well, I would say the biggest thing is if you're looking at a position like this or project management, you need to start early before you get out to make that transition and start planning for that. Connecting with people through the PMI, local PMI organizations, looking at what you've been doing in the military and how it translates to project management, because what I've found is a lot of people do project management and even program management, but they don't necessarily use the PMI methodology or the terms. So you kind of have to be able to marry both those two and understand what you've been doing and how it applies to the civilian market. And what I'd recommend too is diversity on what you can do and what skill sets you bring to the table. Being a warrant officer, I didn't have a lot of opportunities to have direct leadership roles in the military as far as being like a company commander or anything like that. But I took whatever opportunity I could that gave me leadership positions over, decent-sized groups of people. And then when I transitioned out, that's one of the big things I did was getting into the fulfillment business. As you're able to lead very large teams, particularly during peak seasons when you'd bring in seasonal workers and your teams would, swell from 150 to 300 people in a fairly high stress environment. So all that said and done, I think when you put it all together and you present it correctly, and you have I use a resume writer because I don't have the time or the skill set to write mine well. And you tie that in with a really good resume writer who can take your skill sets and transfer it to where you're going and what job you're trying to do. I think that overall picture is kind of what helped get me to where I was. I had a lot of experience with projects that had to get done very quickly without support, and I've luckily been involved in a lot of situations where I've been able to help people move to the next level, whether it's, an hourly associate to a supervisor or supervisor to a manager's position. So all that combined, I think, has really kind of played into this and gave me the potential to get into a situation. But I think it's very doable for a lot of people, and I don't think I would have been in this position had I not gone the route I did coming out of the military.
Well, I hear you there, Jeremy. I'm looking at your profile again here, too, and I'm noticing that you have done a very good job of using civilian words on your profile, and I'm sure you did that in your resume, too, and I know that's tough because a lot of times when people are coming out of the service and they've been in the service for most of their lives, they've always used those words. They don't really know what the civilian equivalent terms are, and so they need help. I mean, I really do feel sorry for anybody trying to do this on their own.
I agree completely. And I got lucky and was referenced to someone who does a great job from a friend of mine who had a lot of success using that company, and it's worked out well. And one of the things with the HR manager here that he was kind of laughing about with my resume was that I didn't hardly have anything on it from being a pilot. Everything was related, and he's like, you just don't normally get that from a pilot. But I mean, that's kind of one of the things you have to do is you have to separate some of the stuff that you did, but you have to show the current civilian work that you've done and be able to put it in terms that make sense for someone who's going to look out there for you and try to bring you into an organization. Yeah,
I hear you. And I always thought it was so interesting that you were formerly a maintenance test pilot in the Army. I mean, I think the first time I ever talked to you, we were joking about how we were lucky that you were still alive.
Yeah. But I will tell you, too, being a maintenance pilot was one of the opportunities that afforded me some of the leadership roles that I would not have gotten any other time, and it allowed me to kind of go down this path. So, I mean, I was making, whether they were good or bad, I was making conscious decisions about my future, 5 years before I was getting out, kind of where I needed to go and what path I needed to go on and how I needed to get there. So sometimes it can be hard to do and plan that far out, but, I mean, honestly, I wish I would have planned probably 8 years out to get it.
Yeah, I certainly hear you there. These LinkedIn workshops that we teach on MacDill Air Force Base, it's an additional option to the TAPS program, and I just really feel for people I always have people raise their hands if they're getting out like in a week or a month, and there's always some of them that I'm like, oh, God help these people. It's just, so few of them really have done any networking. They know a lot of other military folks, but relatively few civilians. And geez, it's hard enough to find a great job in the civilian world when you know a bunch of people, but when you don't know anybody, that's really tough.
I agree with you, and I mean when I got out, I like to call it a myth, but there was the myth that you could just hop out of the military and hop into a six-figure job. It was just that easy. And everybody was really out there, going to pull you in for what you had. But, I mean, it's just not realistic. I mean, because of the job market the way it is and the competition, you can get into great jobs and you can do things, but you a lot of times have to go through the progression and kind of go a little bit slower, at least than I thought I was going to be able to go. But it's been good. I've learned a lot from doing it, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I wouldn't have said that until now, but looking back on it, it's been a good path. It's worked out very well for me.
Well, you're certainly a good role model to follow, and I know, Jeremy, ever since you joined our Project Transition USA group on LinkedIn, you've just been an example of somebody who just dove right in and started participating in discussions and commenting and making other people feel welcome and liking their discussions and comments. And I remember you impressing me with that right from the very beginning. So I think it really says a lot about how you're a giver, and it showed immediately. So I think there's a part of you that's just a natural networker, even though, I mean, how did you ever get on LinkedIn? I'm just curious. How long has it been, and who talked you into getting on LinkedIn?
I was interested in project management, and my aunt actually ran a healthcare consulting company, and I got into an odd conversation with her at Christmas because I mentioned something about project management, and first time she ever stopped and looked at me about work, and she was like, "You do project management?" I'm like, "Yeah, I want to get my PMP and do all this other stuff with project management. I'm really interested in it." And she connected me to a retired colonel who was working for a consulting company that she was working with on a project in Atlanta. And I talked to him on the phone, and he basically told me what to do. He gave me recommendations on what to do and where to go. And one of the things he said was to use LinkedIn to meet people, and then he also, obviously said to go with the local PMI organizations to meet people too. So I got on there, had a horrible profile, had a bad picture, didn't really have anything on there for writing because I didn't know what to put on there. And through time and effort and working with some people and talking to some of my friends who were in business on the civilian side who would look at my profile and tell me about, the 30 or 40 things that were wrong on it, and, to tell me to change it and fix it. So it's been a long process, and I've probably been on there. I was probably on there a good 2 to 3 years before I retired.
Oh, really?
So,
oh.
Yeah, I would say probably at least 5 years or something. It's what it feels like. I'm pretty sure, because I was pushing LinkedIn because I just couldn't believe you can actually meet people. But starting out, it was kind of an awkward semi-social media thing that, as a military guy, I just didn't know what the what the process was, or if I should, try to link in with these people. So it's been a long learning experience.
I bet, because you never even had the luxury of taking a workshop on LinkedIn, did you? You just had to teach yourself.
Yeah, I know. So like this, I'm like a random guy on LinkedIn with a bad profile who says he's a pilot. I'm trying to link into PMs and project managers and program managers, and link into people in the healthcare industry, and it was a mess. I mean, it worked out in the end, and I learned a lot. And you can find the information out there now a lot easier, and a lot more people are getting on it. It's become commonplace. So I think it's a lot better now. But yeah, it takes a while to get used to, and I'm still not good with making the connections or networking post-connection, which is something that we talked about, and it's just still not easy to do, but I kind of have to work on that.
Well, and some people might say you're kind of hard on yourself, Jeremy, because your profile's great, and you've got over 500 first-level connections. In fact, I mean, probably way more than that, and you've been on it for almost 5 years. So I'd say that you're way ahead of the pack. I mean, I'm very impressed with how you just said you got on LinkedIn about 2 or 3 years before you got out. That's almost unheard of in my circles, just so you know. I find that most people they finally get around to getting on LinkedIn when they're literally in the transition phase. So you're way ahead of the pack, and now, of course, you get to play mentor. Like this gentleman did for you. Are you comfortable with transitioning military, especially people that are interested in becoming program managers? Are you comfortable with them inviting you to connect if they tell you who they are and like how they heard about you and maybe heard this interview, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, I connect with anybody and everybody regardless of really what industry it is, because it's kind of fascinating what's out there anyway, and the people you can kind of link into to see what's going on. But I've used LinkedIn to help several people who've contacted me to get jobs, or like push resumes to the right people, or make the right contacts to do that. I mean, it's simple to do. It doesn't take much time, and I've been in the same boat, so it's worked out really well in that aspect too. There's been a handful of people who I've helped them, land jobs, or at least land the right recruiter to have those conversations. So, I'm happy with that, and I couldn't be more happy with the fact that something's out there like that. It's just getting people to understand it and use it. And I think now, even with my friends who are still in, who are even 4 and 5 years out, like everybody has a LinkedIn profile now. They may not know how to use it, but just like Facebook, they all know they need one. And eventually I think everyone kind of has to get into it and start making it a little bit better.
Well, I'm just very, very grateful to you again. Thank you again for spending this time with us this evening. And I'm sure that listening to this interview will, at the very least, give people some ideas, maybe keep them from making a couple of the mistakes that you were saying you made. And I so appreciate your quality of being so giving, Jeremy. Like I said before, it's just always been something that I've noticed about you from the very beginning, and to me, that's a very good thing. So again, I just wish you all the best in your new position at Pinnacle Solutions, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for having me, and I will leave with one last thing between us. Besides doing all this work, if you're transitioning out, practice your interviews, practice your interviews, practice your interviews. Yes. And any quick advice on, the best way to do that? I mean, what helped you, for instance? What helped me was failing miserably in my first interview, and then taking it seriously after that. All I did was look up the STAR format on Google, which is a simple format, and then just follow the format and practiced it, timed it, and was able to learn how to tell my story as opposed to just kind of winging it out there. But I see it now. I see people who've not spent any time doing their interviews, and they can have a great LinkedIn profile. They can have a great resume, but when they walk in the door, the interview is just not good. And I've seen that a lot, that people really need to focus on that too.
Oh, I sure hear you there. And just while I think of it, on our YouTube channel, the Project Transition USA YouTube channel, we have a couple interviews there, mock interviews. And that's something that is available to everybody that, for free. You can watch those. One of them was done by Kim Tran. We were talking about Google earlier. Kim Tran was formerly an HR business partner manager at Google. She's hired thousands of people, and she is so amazing. I happened to invite her to connect on LinkedIn, having no idea that U.S. troops had saved her and her family's lives when they had to flee from Vietnam.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. And she literally flew to MacDill Air Force Base to help me teach one of our LinkedIn job search workshops there. She flew there from, the Bay Area around San Francisco where she lives, and did this mock interview, and thank God we got it on tape. So that's on our YouTube channel. And, that's just an example. How else would I meet Kim? I live in Tampa, Florida. She lives in, the Bay Area in Northern California. It's like LinkedIn has certainly changed my life. That's why I do this. And, if I knew of any better way for people to meet these amazing folks, I would be teaching that, frankly. But I haven't found anything better yet. So, well, thanks again, Jeremy. I think I will add just one other point. I know that we were talking earlier, and I agree with you. I think very few transitioning military know how to take advantage of that free year of a premium subscription that LinkedIn offers to all veterans, whether they're active duty or not. And I'll just tell you right now, the way you get that free subscription, it's called the Job Seeker subscription. You go to a website called veterans.linkedin.com. It's totally separate from LinkedIn. Veterans, plural, .linkedin.com. And then you'll just see the little yellow button there that says Get Job Seeker. So just click on that. And, of course, you want to make it really clear on your profile that you're a veteran or active duty military. And then they will contact you and give you instructions on how to take advantage of that free subscription. But it's good for a whole year. And you were saying you got that, right, Jeremy?
Yes, I've been using it, yes. It's been very helpful.
Any particular way that you found it helpful?
Well, I think it just gives you more access to search and to find things, and gives you some of those extra benefits as far as if you're ever applying for a job, it can tell you how many people have applied for the job, kind of what their backgrounds are. So it's got a lot of interesting information on there. It's just been very helpful. LinkedIn's just been tremendously helpful anyway across the board.
Well, thank you. There's nothing like hearing it straight from you, somebody who's been there, done that. And again, I'm just very happy for you in your new position. And tell Mike hi for us. He's, of course, an icon, a legend, and we're certainly glad he's still alive, that's for sure. I know he came real close to not being alive, so very, very happy that Pinnacle Solutions is doing so well, and we'll certainly be in close touch with you. And again, everybody, you can connect with Jeremy and me through our Project Transition USA group on LinkedIn. It's available to be joined by military and civilians, and that's pretty much where we direct people, so it makes it easier for us to actually introduce to people that you need to know, that's what we're all about. So thanks again, Jeremy. and we'll be in close touch.
Thank you.
Bye for now.